Welcome to Faith Works Live. Here's your host, Rebecca Haynie.
I'm so glad you're here. This is Faith Works Live. Rebecca Haynie is my name, and I've discovered nobody likes a preachy prayer. That's just what we were discussing. Dan Hudson.
Preach it.
Dan Hudson from Pathway Church, our gracious host today. We are live from Pathway, which is pretty exciting. It has been a minute since we talked with you, brother. I know you've gone through, lots of things in your life, in your personal life, and yeah. I appreciate your continued faithfulness in presenting this course on spiritual disciplines, right, which is what we've been doing this series. And you've been giving us a special radio version, like a sneak peek of this class. You've opened up enrollment to all of us in this crash course on spiritual disciplines. I've been learning a lot, and we just have so much to learn. I think without you, we become very undisciplined, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yes. I am the king of discipline. Talk to anyone who knows me. They would say the opposite. So, yeah. I've really thoroughly enjoyed I probably said this before, but restudying these. I studied these a few years ago. Richard Foster had a book we studied in college, and it talked about these disciplines we're talking about. And so through the years, by the way, college was like a long time ago for me. So decades ago. And it's been kind of the standard, and there's other books written on it too, so I bringing other things in. But it's been fun going back to it personally, revisiting it, re-looking at it, and I'm catching it better this time than I ever had before. Because sometimes you read it and it's kind of academic, or you're filling in blanks, or you're processing. And then I've taught it in church. It's been years ago since I've done that, and I don't even know why I did it. I just thought it just seemed like it's a good, solid base for Christian growth and discipleship, and so I just threw it out there. Usually, a lot of times churches things just shut down for the summer. Everybody's off traveling and stuff. And I said, hey, I'm going to do this class. And so, we set up our classroom, and who will come? We've had like 30 people or so, which is like way more than I expected, because I thought it's summer. I was like, and it's been good. It's been a lot of fun. So, and like I say, I've been enjoying looking at it and restudying it and learning it myself. I'm putting together a 1-year certificate that has all the 1 year basics of if you went to Bible college, and it's like the basics. Like this was one of our first year classes, and so I've got this plan. Now I got to make it happen, but. So it might take 5 years to get your 1 year, because no one's doing this for real. You're not full-time students, but it should be a good experience.
I love that idea. See, I'm a firm believer that theology should be for everyone.
It should be.
And that the Christian disciplines, like we're talking about, really all that means is following after Christ.
Yeah.
In practical ways.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, I've got a real life. I wish I could drop everything and go to Bible college, but I can't afford it. And I've got, all these other things going on. But that's not what it's supposed to be like. It's supposed to be following. Maybe that is for some people, and God bless you, and that would be great if you can. But why can't we just disseminate those broader points of theology and then help people understand in everyday ways how to apply some of these concepts? Because I don't think we shouldn't make it as though it's lofty and high above the understanding of anyone that hasn't taken, 3 semesters of ancient Greek. That's not how God ever intended, I think, for his people to look at life. It's that we're doing life together, following after the image of Christ, becoming closer and closer to him and to one another, in this relationship, in this daily walk. And that's what these practical tools that you're teaching us about, that we're calling spiritual disciplines, even though that sounds like a scary word, it shouldn't. It just means following after, right? It's the process of teaching, process of learning how to be like Jesus. And the one that we're going to focus on this week is, I think, really interesting, because we're talking about the spiritual discipline of solitude.
Solitude, and the idea of solitude, it's obviously being alone. It's taking yourself out, withdrawing from a crowd. But it's not just because you're an introvert, and don't want to talk to everybody. It's actually for spiritual purposes,
right?
The purpose of this is to withdraw so that you can focus really on the disciplines. It's almost, some would say, well, it's not really a discipline, but I've kind of approached it as more of a catalyst for the disciplines, you know, because like we talk about prayer and fasting and all the things, the simplicity and so forth. Well, if you're just in a hurry, checking through the list, okay, I prayed, okay, I did my Bible study, did that. You're not, it's helpful. It's better than nothing. But there's something about in solitude, separating from all the noise and the commotion, and everything, and just focusing on, okay, I'm really going to pray in quiet. I realize that's a challenge at times. It's easy for me as a empty nester dad to say, come on, you young mothers, you all need to get some solitude. You're begging for
Step
it.
it
I
up.
get that.
Yeah. What do you think I have been saying? Yeah. But that is a question that I'm sure we'll get to through the course of the time. But that's a real thing for a lot of people.
It is.
Solitude
It's
sounds
legit.
great if we're talking about spiritual, just alone. A lot of people talk about that alone time or quiet time with God. That's how they refer to their devotionals. That's really difficult to come by for a lot of us when you have, maybe 4 kids under 4 screaming at you, and then, the dog just ate something that it shouldn't and it ended up all over the carpet again, and, something broke off the table and it sounded expensive. So what is it that we're supposed to do? I think there has to be a way to fit all of that into every Christian's life.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm going to be taking the most notes on how to do this.
Because even beyond obvious, I mean, there's an obvious one, a mom with young children, but even the busy person who gets up early and they're doing their study and their phone's beeping off, and whether it's texts or somebody in Taiwan liked their post or whatever,
Sure.
because it's the middle of the day. So it's a matter of really escaping all the business. Does the TV have to be on? Does the radio have to be on in the background? Can you take a moment of just silence and reflection? And that's the thing, it doesn't have to last for hours every day. I think that's probably the secret there.
Okay.
Is you just do what you can when you can, but get yourself in some type of a rhythm. And it might be after the children go to bed, and okay, I've got a half hour, I got 15 minutes, and I'm just going to go sip on some coffee and stare at the wall and pray and whatever. Or early morning, figure out there's got to be a way. Or if you go to work, there's a break time in there somewhere.
Right.
Hopefully. When I was in college and worked at a factory, we'd play cards, hearts or whatever it was during break and lunch. So there was always activity. It's how about if you just go outside and not do that?
Right.
So there are ways. You just got to be a little more creative.
Sure. Well, and as my mom always used to say, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. It's all about what you do with it. And I love the scriptural passage that talks about redeeming the time. And I think if I take that approach, instead of providing excuses as to why I didn't get all those things done, you have to reprioritize. Yeah. That's how you redeem your time, is by reprioritizing what's most important, because you always make time for the things that are most important to you.
Yeah.
It takes some creativity, because I think the devil can take that busy routine and twist it and say, I'm just going to crowd out anything that brings you closer to holiness. And instead, I'm going to keep all those little things in your daily routine that keep you more ragged, more exhausted, more distracted, and pulling you further away from God, even though you're doing quote unquote good things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so is this more about eliminating distractions? I think we kind of talked about that last time. Is our quest for solitude, or the importance of solitude, how does that factor into this really distracted world?
Yeah, I think it is withdrawing from that, because to get all of that away, you can go lock a door where even your children can't break in. But then your own
time.
Voice in your head is still talking. So part of that is disciplining yourself enough to quiet your own voice. How many times have you prayed and all of a sudden you're thinking about, if I just put a roast in the crock pot tomorrow, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh God, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Because I'm talking to the creator of the universe, and now I'm peeling potatoes in my head.
Right. Why do I do that?
Well, because we're busy. I'm not saying don't be busy. That's why it's a discipline. It's not just, just click the button, just lock the door. It's it's more than that. It's coming to this quiet inner place. I think it takes us time to figure that out. Maybe it conveniently coincides with when the children are old and move away, but I don't know. But that's
somehow
helpful.
it's just
But then you
easier
have
to do the
grandkids.
solitude thing.
I'm in the
Yes, that's
grandkid
true.
phase now, and they're twice as loud and fast, and because you're twice as slow. So it's really finding that inner peace where it's just you and God hanging out. It could be, stalling for 5 minutes when you park the car before you go into work or to the mall or wherever it is you're going, grocery store. So you find the places, you find the times, and somewhere in there you're setting yourself up, I think, internally. I write lists for myself, either on my phone or physically, depends on what mood I'm in, so that my mind can be quiet. I don't think that's in my stuff anywhere, but that's why I started doing that, because my mind never shuts off. There's always what I'm doing next week and the week after that and 6 months from now, and I got this event coming up, and there's tomorrow,
Yeah.
and there's what I didn't do yesterday. So all that's always flying. We're all like that. But the more I write down, the more I'm free to let that go and not worry about it. So that helps quiet my voice personally. Even the like, oh man, I've got to make 15 minutes of solitude. It's like, just slow down, buddy. Just find some peace, and do sit down and do find it. But then be present in the absence, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I should write that down. I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah. There's
good.
a new T-shirt right there.
Write it
I'm
down.
always making new T-shirts.
Write it down so we don't forget it. Okay.
Write it down. Put it on the list. And
Because I'm absolutely that way. If I don't write something down, I'll forget. I keep it in this like mental hamster wheel over here.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think if I don't have it in
Never
the forefront
stops.
of my mind, I'll forget it.
Yeah.
Or some new thought will come and intrude and just be like, all right, great, there's a parade of you guys. And now I'm all of a sudden up at 1:30 in the morning thinking about, that sub character from a book I read once. And, what about their motivations? Why? Or, why is it that nobody sees Bennigans anymore? What happened to Bennigans? I don't even know. It's just ridiculous stuff like that, or it can be something very important, but that can crowd out the most important thing. And if I say I'm too busy or life is too crazy to be alone with God, I'm like, well, maybe I just need to make some readjustments.
Exactly. I've gone to conferences and have heard through the years, preachers talk about how, like one day a month they'll just get on their motorcycle with a Bible and they'll whatever and just get away and go to the
helmet,
mountains.
I hope.
Go to the cabin, or whatever, and it's just me and God and all the clarity that comes and I'll sit there and think, man, that sounds great. But then I think about it more. I think that would be awful for me because I would not be solitude. I love going like to a cabin out in the middle of nowhere, blah, 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 do the thing, got in the mountains. But then I'd be alone thinking, I wonder how many bears are outside right now. Honestly, that's just how I think. Like the outhouses out there, will I survive this trip? That was actually, we went to Wyoming a few years ago with a men's, it was just like, that's the only bathroom was out there. We're totally in the wild.
All right, man. It's me or the bear.
That was not solitude for me. That was fear and terror. I even had a gun with me.
How good a shot are you?
I didn't want to find out. It's great with a non-moving target. But for me, what has been the best thing is like I can go to a cheap hotel like within 45 minutes and just get away and turn my phone off. Have to turn my phone off. I'll turn it on just long enough to say, "Hey, wife, I'm alive," and then turn it back off. And that's how I have to do it because I'm far enough away that I can't I'll just slip in do this thing in the office real quick. Nope, that'd be a pain. So I've scheduled whatever, a day or 2 days, one night. And when I do that, that's been the times in my life that have had the most clarity for me because I get away and I just quiet everything and listen and pray and study. And so all the other disciplines start coming into focus when before they're happening, but I'm just run. And it's solitude amplifies all of that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and let's talk more about what that looks like. We'll take a little bit of a break, but when we come back, we'll look more at this discipline, the spiritual discipline of solitude, how it builds on what we've been learning, and the disciplines, how we're incorporating these bits and pieces like our Bible reading and our prayer, and how can we do that in solitude and silence? What is it that we're listening for? What are we seeking out of this? If we're in the posture of looking to be in God's presence, how do we know when we're doing it right, Dan? I guess that's what my big question. When we return, you're listening to Faith Works Live. When a woman faces an unplanned pregnancy, every possible emotion goes through her head. Where can she go for help and for hope? She can go to Intervisions. Here in our metro, we have 2 healthcare clinics where she will find hope and help. From free pregnancy testing and STD testing to free ultrasounds, Intervision serves women and men with STDs who find themselves in vulnerable situations. They're completely free of charge because of generous donations from folks like you. And their medical clinics help their patients get all the information that they deserve, that empowers them to make life-affirming decisions. That's what they do at Intervision's healthcare clinics right here in Des Moines. Learn more at intervisionshealthcare.org. That's intervisionshealthcare.org. And you can call 24 hours a day at 515-440-CARE. That's 515-440-2273. There's no better time than now to stand for life. And you can stand with Iowa's original pro-life organization, Pulse for Life. They're the longest-standing nonprofit pro-life organization in Iowa, and they're dedicated to informing, educating, and inspiring a new generation to value the sanctity of all human life, from fertilization until natural death. They serve at the State House. They educate in classrooms, at events. They proudly serve on the coalition of pro-life leaders. They are on the front lines of the battle against this throwaway culture of death that we see all around us, and we are winning ground. Hearts and minds are changing, and the pro-life movement is continuing to grow. And you can be a part of the exciting things that are happening right here in our own backyard at pulseforlife.org and get your finger on the pro-life pulse. Sign up for their newsletter, find ways that you can make a difference, and how you can change hearts and minds with their pro-life apologetics course, pulseforlife.org. The best day. I'm so glad that you're here. It is just a wonderful day to grow closer to God through Jesus. It's amazing that we get to do this. Dan Hudson's in studio. I'm not saying that just because he's wearing an epic shirt. It's a very good day. I'm glad you're with us, Dan.
It's a very good day.
It's a wonderful shirt for radio.
Well, yes, it's very bright.
We have gathered together today to talk about marriage. No. We're actually talking about our crash course in spiritual disciplines. So let me back up. We're talking about solitude. And we're all together in the studio talking about
Let's
solitude.
hold hands.
Yeah, let's make all the introverts real uncomfortable. Yeah, the people that have to mentally prepare for greeting time at church. I have heard. Yeah. I've heard that's a thing. I'm not. I guess I am an extrovert with some introvert tendencies.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy meeting people, talking to people, hearing the stories. You know, the parties are super fun, but then I have to recover from all of that. So I don't know.
Preachers take naps every Sunday afternoon for a reason. I mean, honestly.
It's a day of rest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely an introvert, which is really funny because it's like almost comical that I do anything public at all because I am, even at church, like I'm in the background all the time. Then it's like, oh, that's my cue to get up there, so I'll jump up there and do my thing, and then I quickly go away. And I mean, I hang out with people, but I, go to the corner.
At a distance. You have your bodyguards up there keeping everyone at a distance. Don't touch the talent.
Yes, exactly. I'll be in the green room if you need me.
I told you, no brown M&Ms. That's actually true for a lot of performers, by the way, is that they do have those introverted personalities and tendencies, but they also let their gifts shine on stage, and then they can maintain that kind of disconnection from it. It's fascinating how psychologically how that works out.
It is.
Now, I've got no good segue into the idea of solitude, other than quiet is very hard to come by for many of us.
It is.
So making space for quiet, specifically, not just for quiet, right? Because I think there's a lot of philosophies and like pseudo philosophies out there that talk about the idea of clearing your mind and practicing the mindfulness and all of that. There is that sort of secularization of spirituality going out there these days, and maybe that has some benefit. But specifically, we're talking about relating to God through solitude.
Right. I like, there's a little paragraph that Richard Foster writes in his book, Celebration of Discipline, which is where a lot of my content and idea comes from, as well as other sources, but he's kind of the foundation. He writes that solitude is more a state of mind and heart than it is a place. There is a solitude of the heart that can be maintained at all times. Crowds, or lack of them, have little to do with this inward attentiveness. So you can be in the middle of a crowd and be alone. You can be alone, but be in solitude. I mean, I can sit at a mall and just be in my own time with God, and be surrounded by people. So just backing up what he says there. He says, crowds or lack of them have little to do with this inward attentiveness. It is quite possible to be a desert hermit and never experience solitude. So you can be in the middle of nowhere and still your mind's going. He says, but if we possess inward solitude, we do not fear being alone, for we know that we are not alone. God's with us, right? Neither do we fear being with others, for they do not control us. In the midst of noise and confusion, we are settled into a deep inner silence. Whether alone or among people, we are always carry with us a portable sanctuary of the heart.
Wow.
I think that's the goal.
It's beautiful.
That there's a peace about being with God, whether someone's coming at you, even not being very friendly or whatever. You're just like, all right, let them do their thing, and let God just hang out there with you. So it's an inward thing that you don't just wake up one day and have. It's a discipline. That's why it's a discipline. It's you're cultivating that. So there's all kinds of biblical examples of solitude. Jesus spent a lot of time in solitude.
Sure, prime example.
Yeah. Matthew 4, Jesus went up to the Spirit in the wilderness, was to be tempted by the devil. After that, he fasted 40 days and nights. He was hungry, so he went off alone for 40 days in a desert, right? Fasting, so he was doing the other disciplines. It a catalyst for the prayer and the fasting going on, but he was alone, and of course he was hungry, and then when we have the whole scene of the temptation. In Matthew 14, after dismissing the crowds, he went on a mountain by himself to pray. Well into the night, he was there alone, so he escapes at night. In Mark 1, it says very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he got up and went out, and they were like, hey, where'd he go? So I wouldn't even get too worried about when it works. For him, sometimes it was at night. Sometimes it was early in the morning. Sometimes he just took 40 days and just went off, and was alone. But you find a time. And that's what we were saying earlier. So whether you get up before everybody else, go to bed a little bit after everyone else, whatever it is, you're alone and you're focused on the other disciplines. Luke 4, when it was day, he went out and made his way into a deserted place. So again, middle of the day, morning, night, whatever. Doesn't matter. Don't get so legalistic on, no, this is my solitude time.
Sure.
It's 12:42. and I
that
must
is
now...
the only biblical time. Yes.
It is it. So you do it when you can. So that's a pretty key thing. Luke 5 says he went out often. So it wasn't like, oh, remember that one time when he did that? It was a regular habit where the disciples, I think, got used to just, oh, where's Jesus? He'll come back.
Right.
We'll find him. Don't worry. Or all of a sudden he's walking on the water out to you. It's like, well, wait a minute. But because he just spent time alone. He did it normally. It was part of a schedule. And maybe people need to get used to us being alone once in a while. Because everybody, if anybody's going to command your attention, it's the people commanding Jesus' attention. Everybody wanted to be healed.
Sure.
Everyone wanted to hear him. And even he was like, you know what? This is a little time I'm getting away. And I'm just going to do that. Because it's that critical. And that's what we need to make a priority of it, I'd say.
Well, and I've heard people talk about the connection between when Jesus goes off to be by himself and pray. And that, is that sort of a rest and recuperation from the ministry that he's doing with the crowds? Is that to prepare for, ahead of doing ministry? And I think the rhythm of that, the heart rhythm of that is super important, because there is this idea of, we're hard at work, but we also have to rest. And that is that biblical finding the peace that comes only from the presence of God in order to enable us to have the strength to do what he's calling us to do. And I think so many of us are just trying to do the thing on our own. We're just filling in the actions or checking off the checklist, and we wonder why we feel empty and exhausted and ragged, like we got nothing left to give anymore, and we don't know why we're stretched so thin. It's because we're not filling up. It's because we're not full of this peace that only comes from God.
Right. It's like I tried the disciplines; it didn't work, and Well, yes, you did pray. And it's from a good heart, right?
Sure.
Yes, you are working in prayer, and yes,
and that's it. And I'm not making fun of anybody that's in that position. I can relate.
It.
Like it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard to do. But if it feels like it's so hard to do this thing, maybe it's because we haven't gone to the source that's supposed to enable us.
Yeah.
That it isn't supposed to be all on us all the time. I love that quote that says the Christian life isn't hard, it's impossible, because only Jesus could do it.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
So we can't do it alone.
Yeah.
If we're living our Christian life without Christ, then we got the cart before the horse, is all I'm saying.
Right. I've enjoyed that the TV series, whatever you're calling it, The Chosen. With the story of Jesus. There's parts of it. It's like, okay, this really, I can see that happening. It's a lot more real to me than some of the other dramas, and that's just to me. But there's one part of it that I've been like, it just hasn't worked for me. And that's when he's like preparing the Sermon on the Mount and he's like practicing and having Matthew write notes for him. And I'm thinking, I don't think that's what his solitude was. It wasn't like him practicing a line,
Yeah.
He was so in tune with God. He is God, right? I mean,
Right.
I don't think he had to like, I got to get this outline down, So I struggle with that. But because of his solitude, he could just, because of who he was, and because but he, even with who he was, he went to be alone and commune with the Father, so that he could just go out and naturally speak.
Yeah.
The Sermon on the Mount without looking at notes and thinking about, no, I want to put this first or second, and all this stuff. And that's just a minor thing, but that's probably the only part of that show I'm like, because I think that's what we all are longing for in the solitude is that communion with our Lord, so that it's opening up those channels of communication. I mean, there's all the things we talk about to come together in this time of solitude. There's 4 benefits that I talk about in this class about solitude. One is kind of what we've been talking about, is solitude amplifies our practice of the other disciplines, because that's why you're alone. That's why you've escaped everything, is so you can focus. You can fast during a day of work and still be fasting, but you're working and you're doing other things. But when then you get together alone in solitude, all of a sudden things start clicking and little light bulbs turn on. It's during the solitude time you're focused and you're not distracted and doing what you're doing. So it amplifies the other ones. Secondly, solitude helps us be more fully more fully experience the presence of God. Solitude helps us more fully experience the presence of God. The purpose isn't just to be alone or to be quiet or any of that. It's to fully be present in the presence of God, rather than like, I'm just waiting for that tingly feeling, or I'm waiting for that moment. It's like, no, you're just there. You're just there with Him.
And does that require the Word of God as well? So when you're doing this, is it hand in hand with the Bible? Is it just you by yourself in, a beautiful olive grove and you're just praying
I think
to
it
yourself?
could be either. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, really. My favorite, we have 24/7 prayer rooms all the time. We've talked about them before. And some of my favorite times in the prayer room is the solitude part of it. Sometimes I go in with people, sometimes with groups. A lot of times I'll just go in there alone. And sometimes I'll turn on music. But sometimes it'll be complete quiet. And I'm just in there in this dark room with some little tinkly lights on, and it's just me and God, and there's something about, it's a physical feeling I actually get that I don't get anywhere else.
Wow.
That's part of the solitude thing, and clarity comes from those moments. I'll receive confirmation about things I've been praying about. I have received specific instructions before. Like, I can't even tell you how I get. I just know, like, okay, I just need to do 1, 2, 3, and it's like, well, that's so smart, I don't know. The Holy Spirit somehow communicates that stuff sometimes. Peace comes in ways that are hard to describe, more than just, hey, I'm in a bad situation and I have some peace. It's like there's just an extra thing of peace. Psalm 23 talks about Jesus, about the Good Shepherd, talking about God the Father being the Good Shepherd, how He leads us to still waters and green pastures. And sometimes I think God leads us there, but we're so loud and so busy and so full and so congested and so all this stuff going on that we don't even know we're in the middle of a green pasture. And solitude kind of causes you to pause and go like, hey, look at that. Everything I needed, still waters, green pasture, food, sustenance, I got it all.
That's really convicting.
Yeah.
I think I've heard I've been listening to other people teach on the same vein, coincidentally, providentially, and they were talking about how this might be one of the, again, sort of different for our generation. We have so much noise all the time. Mm-hmm. We don't ever do anything by ourselves. There's always something going on. When you used to have like your time in the shower, your time used to be a prayer time for you. You used to be able, whether you were riding a horse or riding in a car to work for the day, it was quiet.
Yeah, and
you could pray. On your way. We didn't have all the noise and all the distraction and the ruckus that can crowd out. And again, I think the enemy uses that as a distraction to crowd out. But you can also use that to bring you into that right mindset if you're using music, if you're using the scriptures being read to you. I do think that can help. But it's on us to create that environment where we can approach God, where we can be present in his presence. I don't have any great secrets on that. Maybe you do, but I find that fascinating that if we look at the rhythms of years past and we think, wow, people just were more spiritual back then and we live in sort of the shallow time. Well, maybe we just need to make space.
Yeah.
Stop the noise and make space, because he's still there and he's still blessing us. We just haven't looked around to recognize that we need open eyes to see the spiritual reality. We need that open heart that looks around for gratitude instead of complaining, instead of taking everything for granted that he's given us. If he has led us to the still waters and the green pastures, open our eyes and say thank you, and turn our eyes toward heaven, to the God who gave it to us and who is continually leading us. We just have to see what he's already doing.
Exactly. A few years ago, I was in a situation. There was some conflict going on. There were some relationship issues with some people, or really one person, but you want to handle it in a godly way, and you're trying to keep your ego out of it, or as a Christian, you just want to handle this correctly, and it would have had a negative effect on a lot of people if things blew up in a poor way. Mm-hmm. And so I thought you think, you plot, you plan, you pray, you're busy, you're doing your thing. And I thought I really have got to get away for a couple of days and do the solitude thing. And so I got myself a hotel about 45 minutes away, and I'm driving out there, and I'm going to fast, I'm going to pray, I'm just going to listen. And like I'm literally just on the drive there. So it's like early on in this couple of days. I think it was 2 nights, 3 days actually. I was getting this strong sense, just be quiet. I thought, okay, that's a weird thing to get. I don't even know. So I thought I'm just making that up, whatever. So I don't even remember how that came to me, but that's I just kept in this sense, just be quiet. So I disregarded it, and went on through the weekend, and prayed, had a long time. I was actually really non-eventful. There were a few times I felt like a confirmation of like, okay, no, really, just be quiet. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember how it happened. Like at the end, it was the last night. I was going to go to bed. And I was going to leave in the next morning, and I was kind of disappointed. Like I was really looking for some big wow bang, or I don't know, something. And there's some breakthrough moment. I actually sort of didn't weep, but I was cheering up. Like God was like, no, just be quiet, And I was like, all right. And so I came back, and then the next setting, I was quiet. And that was exactly, I would never have guessed that. It was not the natural thing, but that's exactly what needed to happen, was me just to not say anything. Like literally don't say anything in this setting that was going to happen. And like God did some really great things to that. I never would have done it. I've never would have gotten to that, especially as a dude with an ego,
Sure.
Because I can shut you down, buddy, and it was just so much better.
Yeah.
And it would never have happened the way it did had it not been for a time of solitude combined with prayer and fasting and enhanced the other disciplines. And so, that's great. I got distracted here. Number 3, solitude exposes the idols we don't even know we have.
Ooh, okay. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Most of us would say, well, I don't have any idols. I don't have a Buddha, on my bookshelf or anything.
Sure.
What are you talking about? But if you're going to get into solitude and you're going to just cut things off, all of a sudden you have the strongest. I got to check that social media post.
It's right here in my hand, and it's flat, and it has an apple on the back. That's the problem.
Exactly. See,
because objectively, I brand dropped, I name dropped, and I didn't mean to. Sorry, Google users. But that's it.
Yeah,
that is a key idol for us in this time, because it's taking our attention away from God. And we think we can't live without it. Mm-hmm. How many of us will leave our Bible, we'll forget our Bible on our nightstand, but if we forget our phone, we're going back for it.
Right.
I mean, man, that's That is the modern day idol of our time.
It is. And so, yeah, if you can't handle a few hours without it, it's time to disconnect a little bit. So I'll have to put mine on airplane mode because it won't vibrate and talk, do all the stuff it'll do.
I'm sorry, God, I got to see what's happening on my socials.
Exactly.
Can't spend quiet time with you, but I can check my notification. I mean, I'm saying that because I'm guilty of it.
Yeah.
And I really do need. One of the cool things about our family vacation was we didn't know it at the time, but it actually became sort of a screen-free vacation because they didn't have internet.
Oh, nice.
Out there. So, I mean, other than the occasional, could pick up Wi-Fi on the way.
Yeah.
We were out 10.5 hours away from our house and in a cabin with no internet. Nice. So it was actually a really nice time.
Once you get through the withdrawals.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. Once the shaking stopped, it was fine.
Your leg's still vibrating. You're like, what?
Look at my eye
phone
twitching.
In there. Yeah.
Look at this. This eye still twitches. But it's good. It's a good twitch.
And we come up with but the weather's coming. I better check the weather.
Yeah.
It's like whether you check it or not, it's still coming. I mean, you're.
Have I told you that Jeremiah likes to talk to our Google speaker at home, which is a problem because he's a guy that we taught him to talk early and he has never stopped yet. So he will ask Google what the weather will be in the morning, and I've allowed him to do this on occasion, although now I regret it because he's like, "Is it raining outside?" I'm like, "Dude, you're surrounded by windows. Just look outside and see." Well, Google says it's cloudy. I'm like, "Well, step out 2 feet to the right and just look out the window, not windows, window." Oh. So yeah, we created a monster. But how many of us are like that?
Yeah.
Where we find any excuse to electronically, and a lot of it is psychological, a lot of it is our brain chemistry being rewired by the dopamine hits that are happening because it's all the ding, shiny. We've retrained the reward centers in our brain.
Yeah.
Which is scary when you think about it. Right. That some of the classic things that used to be motivators to us, that God designed us to work in His good world, in His good way, some of those are rewards for hard work. You have to work hard to get there. And now we get that instant gratification. And so now we feel that withdrawal if we take it away. Yeah. So that's something that I've been convicted about just in terms of that modern day idol. I didn't realize that I was as... I talk to the kids a lot about reducing the screen time and getting that out as an idol in our lives. I didn't realize that it had taken root in my own heart to that extent. So thank you for allowing me that time to confess, Dan. I appreciate that.
I'm working on confession here, right? That's one of the future disciplines. So
ooh, preview.
I'll use you. No.
Okay, please do. Why not? I've been a sermon illustration before.
Goes with the territory, right? The fourth one is that solitude provides healing to our tired and weary souls. And we'll think, I just no way I'm too busy. I'm too busy to do solitude. And it's the opposite. We're so busy we can't not do it. You need to recharge. You need that time. Life gets discouraging. It gets dark. Everything seems impossible. All that stuff. And there's something about just rebooting and connecting with God. So that's necessary.
And there's so many things that the world feeds us that say that you don't have to look very far to talk about the virtue of me time, the virtue of self-care. We hear that a lot. But all those things, it doesn't matter how many bubble baths you take. And maybe that's good and that's wonderful and you deserve it. Okay, great. Get a Snickers. You deserve a break. Or whichever candy bar that was. But still, not sponsored. But that's not going to fill you up to the point where you can serve. You can put yourself last, where you can die to yourself every single day. If you try to do that without going to God first, for the strength, for the power, for the peace that it's going to take to go through that, of course you're going to be worn out and exhausted. You're going to feel empty all the time because that comes only from Him.
Exactly. There's a lot of people that work in Christian service in one way or another. And it could be pastors or it could be at any level that burn out because they're not practicing solitude.
Or they start listening to some of those ego voices. They start listening to some other voices too. Yeah. I think that's happening a lot. Different topic, but
right.
I think it's another problem that comes when we're not being present with God and when we don't make His voice the most important.
Yeah. So, it's just so healthy. Well, I also have on here 5 reasons we don't practice solitude. So all the excuses that we give, right? One of them is we are uncomfortable and bored. Because everything we said, we hate quiet. Yeah. I mean, even at school now, they let them wear the headphone, earbuds and stuff while the
Isn't
class
that
is going,
crazy?
because we're just wired to do multitask and all that stuff, and it's like, sure. I mean, I'm that way too, to an extent, but you got to have some time to disconnect. Don't be afraid to get bored. Secondly, we fear our reality without distraction. Foster says many people have a natural tendency to run away from solitude because they fear what may come to the surface in the silence that so often drives people to noise and crowds.
Wow.
We go running, we have to have a podcast we're listening to. Maybe someone right now might be listening. We exercise.
Not if there's anything wrong with that.
That's good. This
is a good one.
one's okay.
Yeah.
But we're always keeping things going in our mind. But solitude, when we practice it properly, breaks through that need for continual stimulation and brings that place of peace that I mentioned earlier.
That's what our generation is looking for.
Yeah.
We're
it's
in
right
the most
front of us.
anxious, the most depressed, the most scattered and distracted, and generation that the world has ever seen. And it's here, but we're afraid.
Yeah.
We're afraid of approaching the solution that God has designed for our hearts to bring us into communion with Him, because I guess we're afraid of being alone with Him.
Yeah. What if I have been wrong all along?
Yeah.
Sometimes the time with God is convicting.
Yeah.
And it's just easier to run, and that's what we're doing. He asked, like, what if in a moment of silence and reflection, I see what I don't like? What if my addictions and compulsions really do own me? Because I've been telling myself all along, I can stop anytime I want. I've got this.
That's what an addict says.
Yeah, exactly. What if I'm allowing past disappointments to dictate my current behavior? That the silence sometimes will just kind of bring that out. This fight I'm in with God, gets exposed. This lifestyle I'm living that I deep in my heart, I know is not godly, but I've been trying to tell myself it is. We have a whole culture there, doing what they want, living as they want, living in rebellion, saying, being their own God. But when you go into solitude, that kind of gets exposed. And so it's kind of frightening.
It is. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a bit of a break? That'll give me a chance to be quiet for a second and collect my thoughts. Not driven by fear in any way, not running away. But we will be right back with more about solitude, some of the excuses that we can put to bed so that we can fully embrace the discipline of solitude. Dan Hudson is our excellent guide along this spiritual journey. And Ron Carlson is producing this and making us sound so good. Ron, thank you so much. And when we return, more about practicing solitude to get closer with God in just a moment. In today's world, security has never been more vital. And at FaithWorks Live, we're proud to partner with VeriGuard Security. It's a professional physical security service, and they're really raising the bar in security and private investigations. Whether you need a team of professional officers to protect what you have worked hard to build, or their mobile security units for multiple properties or large locations, from business or corporate properties to your home or neighborhood. Perhaps you've got an event coming up. They secure quality security coverage for events large and small, because it's about peace of mind and protecting you, your family, your team, and your property. Settle for nothing less than the best when it comes to your security. You shouldn't have to compromise. When it comes to security, you can trust VeriGuard. Contact them today at veriguard.us. That's VARA guard.us. For security service, you can trust VeriGuard. This is the perfect day to listen to this conversation right now, because while it is still called Today, Dan Hudson is our guest, walking us through the spiritual discipline of solitude. Yes, we're doing it together, but that's okay. He is teaching us this spiritual posture of the heart. I really like that language, where it's not so much about like everything could be going crazy around you, and you can still have that inner peace, really, but it comes from a soul that is present with God and regularly takes the time to hear from God, takes the time to crowd out any distractions, to get quiet before God and just ask God, what do I need to do? to be with him, to understand. And it works together with the prayer, with the reading of God's word that we've already talked about, and with your fasting. But we've been talking about excuses as to why we avoid solitude, I think especially in a modern age. And this one hits home, Dan.
Right. I think this is a big one for most of us. We lack motivation if we don't have an audience.
That's
Even
rough.
if we don't think we do. How many pictures do you take for social media before you post the one?
How long does it take? It probably depends on how old you are and how good the lighting is.
Yeah, how many angles, a little up, a little
Yeah.
down, there to the side. You're getting all these.
Till you're skinny. That's the secret.
I learned a long, many years ago with two daughters in my home that I would have to ask permission before I post any pictures of them because
wise.
There's an audience.
Yeah.
What will my friends think? What will this is the image that we're portraying, and the same thing happens with solitude. I was talking to a friend a few weeks ago who we were talking. I don't remember, might have been about this even, but he was in the Gulf of Mexico once on the beach. Beautiful setting, and he just plopped down on the beach. It must have been on a work trip or something, and he was there by himself. And he had brought his Bible with him, and he's looking around. And it was just a gorgeous. They thought, I'm going to take a picture, So he spent a few minutes, and he positioned his Bible, opened it up, and set off at the sun. It just took all this time took the perfect picture, and he captioned something like, "Oh, it's great to spend time with God," or something. He said, then he got up and left. He literally never read his Bible.
Oh.
And he's
that
like,
hurts because it's true.
Yeah, exactly. He goes, what? Really? Like he was upset with himself. He was confessing that, and
We perform for the audience.
we do. We just do. I mean, children do. You walk into a room with a 2-year-old, they're going to perform. And when their parents walk in, the performance changes dramatically.
It does.
It just does. And it's true with solitude too. Our prayers are elaborate in King James or whatever, And then, but I always wonder, the guys who pray King James, do they pray that way alone? I mean, in solitude?
Why, verily.
I mean,
Verily doth we do.
and that's not criticism on the King James. I just always wondered that since I was a kid. It's like, I've never heard you talk that way. Maybe they do pray, whatever. But point being, we're performing even subconsciously. For the
So if it's
audience.
just you and God, it eliminates that other distraction.
Exactly.
You have to get real.
No pretense, no anything. It's
And he
just-
knows who you are.
Yeah.
He knows you inside and out. And so if you start making excuses, you're like, God, I don't need to tell you this.
Yeah.
You already know.
Yep.
So just let's get real.
Yeah.
Let's get real with each other. And I think the Psalms are a really good place to start with that, too, if you're trying to build this. At least it has been for me, to get real with the inner emotions. We don't have to pretend with God. So sometimes that using God's word to speak back to God and to start that conversation is a really good way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the last one is we perceive that silence and solitude are luxuries. We think that people are just attempting to escape reality, and it's like I can't do that. I'm glad you can, but I
Isn't
can't
that
do
nice
that.
for you?
Yeah, it'd be really wonderful, but that's not.
In reality, it's an expectation.
Yeah,
And if anybody, you're not busier than Jesus.
right.
And one of the things that impresses me about Jesus' life, and I've heard this, is that he was never in a hurry. He always proceeded at exactly the pace, at exactly where he was supposed to be. And he took hours where the disciples, like we were talking about, they didn't know where he was.
Yeah.
And he was alone with God because it was that essential.
Yeah, our friend Lazarus is dying. I'll get there. Don't worry.
This is not the end. I love that. This is not a disease unto death. Like, well, but he died. But it wasn't the end. That was the point.
I got this. Don't worry. I would spend some time in solitude. I know what to do. So, yeah. Okay, I lied. I said 4, there's 5. We think there's not enough time, and that's what we just kind of talked about. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, what do we get out of this? And I hate to put it that way, but what I mean to say is not that it's transactional, because we should do it because we love to be with God, but also you've outlined a few added benefits to kind of the ways that we know that this is bearing fruit.
Right. Increased sensitivity and compassion for others because you're actually with them. You're not entertaining them, not worried about what they're saying or what they're thinking. It's more real. Freedom to be with people. It's just a healthier place for you psychologically. Number 3, a new attentiveness to people's needs. Okay, yeah. How often do we just brush off what we know? We're busy, we're going places. I know this person has a big hurt in their life. I don't have time. So like, oh, yeah, good to see you. Bye. And this allows you to
that
no,
old,
we're going to stop.
how is everyone doing at church? Fine, good. And then you
good.
move away and
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
think about it.
Exactly. And this allows you to just really actually stop and hopefully pull them in a little bit too and say, hey, you've got to be hurting right now. How can I help you? How can I pray for you? It just helps with that. And then a new responsiveness to people's hurts. So that kind of goes together there, which we were saying there is you recognize, and then because you're connected more to God, of course you want to help. You want to be an assistant. You want to be the hands and feet of God, because He's alerted you to what's going on around you, because you've slowed down enough to see.
Yeah.
You can jump in.
It's one of those paradoxes, I think, again, about the Christian kingdom and the Christian life, is that we think that we can't do this type of thing because we're so busy out doing all the other good things that we're supposed to do. Lord, how am I supposed to wait and spend time with you because you called me to do all these other things?
Yeah.
But the paradox is that you won't be able to effectively do all those other things, to serve everybody else, to heal the hurts, to offer the reconciliation, to feed the hungry, and clothe the naked, and all of that, if you're not first starting with a foundation with that personal relationship with God. That is not a slogan. You actually do need to spend time with God every day. And if you don't do that, if the more time that you spend with that, conversely, you'll be able to be, I use the metaphor of like filling up your tank, which is not original to me, but you can then pour out God's love to others because of you first receiving it. And this is the language that Scripture uses over and over again, that we are filled with the Holy Spirit, right? That we love because He first loved us, that we forgive because of how richly we have been forgiven. And when we're out there, I think a big charge of sometimes Christian hypocrisy gets thrown around a lot like that. But there's an awful lot of people that are trying to run around, act like what they think Christians should look like.
Yeah.
But they can't do it. There's this like hollowness about it. There's an exhaustion about it. Not because they're bad people, not because they're trying to be fake, but because they're trying to do it without plugging into the source of the power, which is God Himself. That's where the love comes from. It's where the empathy, the compassion, the kindness, the getting outside of ourselves, shutting up enough to let other people talk. It's where the healing comes from. It's not coming from us. We're no different than Sinner Susie down the street, whatever. It's only by the grace of God. And it's only that if we are healed ourselves, that we don't go out and hurt everybody else, that we can actually offer that healing that we have already received. It has to be from that whole place that we then reach out with the ministry of reconciliation, the way Paul describes. At least that's what I'm learning now. I say this from a path of, the flunked student that is trying it again this next time. To be authentically Christian is to be with God, is to seek that relationship first. And then that has fruit, exactly as you're outlining with our relationships with everybody else.
Yeah. We have a homeless outreach. And we'll take a grill out, a mobile grill, and we'll go out and just start grilling burgers. We'll go into the camps, and do this feeding. And the temptation is to just do as much as possible. We get out 400 hamburgers, great.
Sure, get the buns out.
Get those out. Do it. And somewhere in that, because we're going through the disciplines, I met with our team. I said, you know what? We're going to set up tables and chairs, and we're going to sit down, and we're going to be with people. Because how often do you want to? We don't want to be with the homeless. We just want to say we fed them, so we can pat ourselves on the back and say, "Look at us, we're great Christians."
Let's take a selfie.
And you half the time they don't even make an eye contact. They're just handing stuff out. And I'm just saying, I don't think that's good enough.
Right.
And so this has been an amazing summer where we'll sit down, we put up a tent, little pop-up tents, and we cook and we bring watermelon stuff that we always think, what would it be hard for them to get, and the conversations we've been having. Last time we brought out a portable haircut deal. We started getting
nice.
Haircuts, and it's just like we're building actual relation. They're people, It's not just I would like to get this service thing done. I think that's part of an extension of Solitude.
Yeah,
is we're looking into their soul. And I know some of their names now. Estelle say, "Hey man, you had your back was hurting last week. How you doing now?" And that's just, I think we're called to that. Rather than just mass producing of hey, we fed 49 people, they're great, and how many people,
Yeah, which goes back to trying to impress an audience that isn't God.
Exactly. Because we're going to report that, and everybody's
Sure.
going to say, you guys are a great church.
And that'll make us feel good and look good out to the world. But that's not what God calls us to. Because He who knows us inside out, He wants us to be with Him. And He knows that the way that we can be not only whole, but also most effective and wholly alive and living the life abundant is only by connection to Him.
Yeah.
Apart from us, we can do, or apart from Him, we can do nothing. But in Him, we will bear much fruit.
Yeah,
So
I think it all comes from this, the place of solitude and the disciplines.
So we know we're doing it right when we're actually doing it.
Yeah, right.
When we're doing it. And I think this is one of those things you can tell. You can tell when you're starting to feel exhausted all the time, when you're starting to feel like you're empty and you're just scraping the bottom of the barrel and you're going through the motions. Maybe this is a good place to just plug back in and take the phone, out of your pocket, throw it away for a minute, and just make sure the kids are in bed and they're, safe. But just take some time to be alone with God.
Yeah.
See what's the worst that could happen? It's going to be a good thing. No matter what, that'll be a good thing.
Right?
Turn off the stove, just prepare and be precautious. Dan, I really appreciate this.
Yeah,
this
fun.
is really cool.
Yeah.
I feel more disciplined already.
It's good.
Good for me. It's all about me. Didn't you know? No, it's not. It's actually all about you. And I'm glad that you're listening. We couldn't do it without you. You've been listening to FaithWorks Live. And if you have thoughts and comments you'd like to share, let me know. Go to FaithWorks Live on Facebook. Follow us there. And YouTube, we'll be able to stay and chat in the comments. I really appreciate one of the recent comments that I saw. Shout out to listeners like, oh, wait, this is an old school radio show. I didn't know they still had those. This is cool. Yes, we are. I put our radio show on YouTube sometimes, but we're an actual radio show, which is really fun that this still exists. And we do it for you. Thank you, Ron Carlson, for being our epic producer. Thank you, Dan Hudson. Thank you, Pathway Church. And until next time, we have our mission. So let's be about it, to love God, serve others, and live free. Thanks for listening to FaithWorks Live.